biz. This is the biz.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Jay Graham with What's the Biz 559. Today we got some special guests here. We have Miriam and Courtney. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and let us know exactly what you guys do. Titles.
Awesome. I'm Miriam Sallam. I am the director of our foster care and education program at College of The Sequoias and our Giant Marketplace, which is also our basic needs center.
Thank you for having us.
Yes,
Courtney Sallam. So Miriam and I are sisters, as most people know. I am very, very new to my new role. I am currently serving as Dean of Student Services at College of Sequoias. But both Miriam and I serve in different capacities. We also do some adjunct work, some teaching with Fresno Pacific. And both of our history, or I would say our background, really comes from a social work lens. Yeah. Both of us have our degrees in social work and have done some community work in that realm as well.
Right. Yeah. So let's start from the beginning then, because y'all are using a lot of big words that I may not know exactly what it is. So we're going to try to break it down a little bit or whatever, right?
We could do that.
Okay, so, let's starting when you were in high school, right? What did you guys know you were going to go into these fields, or what was the plan? Like, was it What was your parents educated? Where did this start from?
So we came from a single mother who, from the time we were small, had designated what we were going to be, had told us, really, really built in that strong foundation of, okay, Courtney, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, Miriam. And so I think that was just the foundation of education is important. You have something big. You need to do something big.
Wasn't an option.
It was not an option. And I think that, although she didn't get to kind of see us through that path, we just kind of kept going with that idea of hey, there's no turning around. There's no looking back. You need to make something of yourself. And really just to survive. I don't think it was necessarily to, give back to the community in any way. We weren't thinking on that level in high school. I think it was just how do we survive? How do we get out of this poverty mind frame physically and also mentally? It wasn't just we were living in poverty, but our mentality of poverty was there as well. So we just really were looking to grow. How do we just be something for ourselves and not live like this anymore? Yeah. And so we went away to school. I went away to college right out of high school, and I went to be a nurse. I was that was my major. I'm going to be a nurse. And again, definitely not thinking of the social work field at all. I ended up moving back and getting pregnant with my son at a young age at 21, which I had him at 21. And me just thinking, what are you going to do? Is nursing really for you? What are you going to do? And again, that survival mentality of how am I going to raise this kid? How am I going to make a better life for him than what I had? And so I just remember Courtney being in she was in the social work bachelor program, and she's just just take this class. You're doing general ed, take the intro to social work and see. And it just fit. So that's how I ended up kind of going that route of social work changing that path. I changed my major. I had my son. I was working full time and just really commuting back and forth to Fresno State at that time and working at Taco Bell full time, just really just trying to make it really. Yeah. And again, not knowing where social work was going to take me, just really kind of diving into hey, this is what it's going to be. Yeah. You're going to have a degree to fall back on. Yeah. That's really where it started.
I think for me, so backing up a little bit, let's backtrack into high school. And let me just paint a picture for you all. The reason why Miriam talks about being kind of in a survival mindset and just trying to make it is because, like she said, we lived with a single parent who was struggling with addiction. And substance abuse was just taking over our lives and had struggled for years with substance abuse. And it just had grown to a point where as children, we were really tired of the impacts of what true substance abuse can do to a person, to a family unit. And what was taking place was there was a lot of neglect happening. And we were just trying to survive in the moment. And it had probably reached in our high school years a pivotal point for our mom, who had probably been the worst that we had ever seen with this. We were aware I guess that's what you could say. You become even more aware of what's truly happening. And so that survival mindset was really, really like prevalent in that moment, because we were going to high school and grades were a big thing for us. And those were things that she set for us. The foundation, do well in school. Education was kind of like that gateway, like to just making it in life. And so it was almost like this double impact of you're trying to do well in school and still trying to survive, knowing that there's chaos at home. And there's 3 of us. So we have a younger sibling as well. And so in high school, I don't think we were even thinking of like, oh, I want to be a social worker when I get older. It was more so of how can I survive and how can I make the right amount of money to survive and to take care of one another. And that's kind of how we functioned, is okay, we have this parent who is struggling, and we had dealt with so many of the implications of that addiction. And that included moving multiple times, feeling very insecure about food, about bills, electricity, those kind of things. And so it really changes the dynamic of your brain and how you really think about things and how do you get from A to B. And in high school, that was really the mindset, is like, I need to secure really good grades. I need to stay on top of everything, but also hide what's really happening at home. So in high school, I don't know that social work per se, or even just a career path per se, was really designed, aside from what we were taught, or, when my mom talked to us really early on, and I think it was in kindergarten where she kind of set the path about education. Aside from that, I don't know that we really thought like this is where we would be so many years later, as far as like a career path. And then for me, I think I always knew that working with people was probably going to be in my path in some way, shape, or form. Even though the goal of being a lawyer was set there early on, it really was just a goal of doing something that I think our mother was really trying to instill in us, is like, you need to be successful in some kind of way. And then eventually, I became turned on to a path of social work because we had a social worker. Once I reached the age of majority, once I reached 18, Child Welfare Services became involved with our life. And Miriam and my younger sister were still minors, and I was an adult. And so we had a social worker working with us, due to the impacts of the substance abuse. And I became really intrigued with what she was doing and her ability to really work with all 3 of us in such a complicated way. And that's what turned me on to the field of social work. Child welfare is like one component of social work. I mean, you can do social work in so many different capacities, but I was so intrigued by what she was doing and really felt like that was my path. And I actually started at the College of Sequoias. Miriam did go away to college. She got accepted to Chico State, and she went away, and I stayed locally because I was still caring for my younger sibling. And I went to school locally and then transferred to Fresno State. And so I think in high school, what I recall during my high school years was really this mindset of, I cannot stop until I get to a place of sustainability over time. And not just for me, but for my siblings as well. And I'm the oldest, so quite naturally in birth order, the oldest usually carries kind of that mindset. But Miriam and I really probably acted more as partners and how we figured out how to sustain and pay bills. Because when you have a parent that is struggling with addiction, there is a lot of uncertainty. And part of that uncertainty is like, is she going to pay the rent this month? Is she going to get the welfare check, cash it, and dip out? And so we kind of derived a little plan of how we would be sustainable. We were already older. We were old enough to work. So that's kind of where the drive kind of started, is like, let's get jobs. If Rosie if she's struggling or she doesn't get to paying the bills and doesn't pay the bills, then our checks as teenagers will pay the rent. And at the time, let me just set the scene. rent was like $345.
Yes,
It is nothing in comparison.
But that was a lot then.
That
too.
It was a lot. And
Yeah.
and it took both of us to work.
It took both of us, yeah.
Wow.
So I've been working since a month after I turned 16, I got my first job. And although it was part-time, because as a high school student, you're not supposed to work full-time, I worked a lot of hours and we sacrificed a lot.
While still trying to stay up on our grades. And if you ask me now, I couldn't tell you how we did it. I couldn't tell you. I can tell you that having a strong faith background and being very determined to not live a life and continue on with what we were dealing with and creating generational change was probably the focus. I wouldn't even know to say like, I'm doing this to change the trajectory of the next generation. But at the time I knew enough that we didn't want to live like that.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to live in a survival mindset, although we lived in a survival mindset and in some ways it served us very well.
Yeah.
That's the plus and the minus to, surviving different types of trauma, unfortunately. That's, you either choose to have a better path or you sometimes become part of that, the same cycle. Yeah. So I think that was really what it came to. But I think also the partnership that we had within one another really helped both of us because we had to kind of learn.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what is this looking like without really having that guidance about, college and life. And so when you ask about high school, it was a very different time for both of us, and while still surviving and growing and being teenagers.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. When I'm gathering from that, to be that young, like I worked young too, but I didn't have to pay the bills. I just worked because that was something, my parents was teaching me something. I wanted,
kids now.
I wanted some Nikes, and so it's like, okay, you want some Nikes, you better go, mow some lawns or something. So
You better pay for
but
that.
that's crazy to pay the man. That's such
And we
a
split
huge
'em.
responsibility.
We definitely split the
that young.
bills.
We split the bills. I was responsible for the rent and Miriam was responsible for the utilities.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we both brought our money together to make sure that like our younger sister had whatever like necessities that she needed, because that was also a huge piece too, is that it's running a household basically, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so so once you graduate, you said you went to college, and so you get into what was your first career jobs that you got?
So after graduating with my bachelor's, my first career job was child welfare services here in Tulare County. And so that was where I served for 8.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Great experience. And like Courtney shared, social work, it's such a broad field, a broad discipline. But again, not knowing where we were going to go, what that was going to really look like. It was just a job, and we were excited for it. And it was like we were following one another, and it seems like we're doing it again. Courtney was already working child welfare services, and she graduated before me. Of course, naturally, she's the oldest. And so I came on maybe 2.5 years later.
Yep.
And it was just like, again, it was just the next step. It wasn't necessarily seen as like a career, like it was just like, okay, great, this is our big grown-up job,
Right.
Our
and
first
we were
big grown-up job.
excited, and and not knowing what it really was. Like, yes, education prepares you for working with individuals, in your community and really being a helping profession, but really not knowing what that looked like. It was just we were just excited to be there, and really grateful and humble that God had brought us that far,
Right.
and making big girl checks. So
Yeah.
And afforded different opportunities.
and afforded different opportunities in that time. So
So we both worked like, we have humble beginnings. We both worked
Yeah.
for Taco Bell.
yes,
And that really taught us a lot in high school and right after high school. And then I transitioned and worked for Walmart while pursuing my bachelor's degree. And that really allowed me to have a flexible schedule. I had like an awesome boss who really like understood that I was going to school. But we were also very dependable. So during the time of pursuing our education with our bachelor's degrees, we worked those type of jobs. And then once we graduated, once I graduated, almost immediately, I graduated in May, and I interviewed for Tulare County Child Welfare Services, and I was picked up in August of that year, which was was a huge blessing too, because like Miriam said, we were making good money. At that time, we were going to get benefits, retirement. And I feel like that was even those little small things, no one really had talked to us about retirement and planning for the future. And I remember even my orientation where they were asking us, did we want to have a separate, add to an additional retirement? And not really even knowing what to contribute to that. And I remember contributing $15 per paycheck. And now I look back and I want to kick myself because I wish someone had just had that conversation with me, because seriously, it's like learning life. And so
it was
the benefits of our next generation now who have us to come and ask us those questions or for us to pour into is such a difference, because we didn't know and no one really had talked to us about it. And our father was absent for the greater part of our childhood. And he would be what most people would probably consider successful at that time, because he had his own business and made good money. He just did not attribute to our childhood, and nor did he really provide any kind of child support or anything like that. So the struggle was really real during the time. And from what we can recall, and granted, we also recognize perception is different when you're a child versus an adult, and the different levels of life too, and the different seasons of life, your perception changes. So this is us recalling during that time and the things that we seen and experienced. And as you probably can pick up, we talk about it a lot. We talk about the different things, the traumas, the mental health piece, because during the time of the childhood of dealing or working with someone who is in an addiction, it was, as a child, you're angry with your parent. You blaming your parent. You really don't understand why. And you feel why are you doing this to me?
Yes,
why can't you get it together? Right. And I think and we've talked about it during our pursuit in education, both our bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, we learned and talked in depth about just the addiction piece and how trauma plays a huge role in it, how mental health plays a huge role in it. And I think that really shaped both Miriam and I in our careers. Once we transitioned over to working with families in child welfare services and both pursued higher levels of education, it really helped shape how we really worked with families and really understood addiction, because anyone who has dealt with anyone who is struggling with addiction, I mean, the ugliness comes out, right? And most people are angry with that person and usually have been done dirty in so many ways. I mean, I could tell you stories. And we laugh about it because comedy is a huge part of, surviving and healing. And so you will see us laugh probably very inappropriately, but about things. And we recall things that are not funny, but are funny.
They are funny.
Yeah. But it really did help open our eyes about understanding how the brain functions, how addiction attacks, certain types of addiction attacks the actual makeup of the brain and body's response. And then you have mental health and trauma that attached to that. And it's, the co-occurring pieces that really make it harder for a person who's already struggling to really come back to reality. And that was something that I think Miriam and I really talked about. And I think it served us some healing with looking back at what we experienced with our mom and her struggle with addiction, because we were very angry with her. We were mad at her for, choosing this path, and recognizing that, by default, in whatever she was dealing with in her own childhood trauma, then passing over to adult trauma, that kind of probably aided in how she became addicted and couldn't fight that fight, And so I think that education really served us, and then working in it day to day and working with families and really seeing the brokenness in the community from a child welfare lens and dealing with abuse and complexities of trauma, it continued to serve as awareness, education, growth for us, and
Advocacy.
just and advocacy and very honest conversations within our own family, and not just our immediate family, but our extended family as well.
Yes.
And those were some really deep conversations that I feel like I'm so glad that I had a partner to have that conversation with, because social work really opened us up to that. And that's that education piece that we spent. And a lot of it really came once we started pursuing our master's degrees.
Yes.
And Miriam actually pursued hers first, and then I came right after her. And then we talked about the things that we were learning, because there are certain segments of getting your master's that it talks specifically about the brain, about the psychological impacts of trauma, and just really some deep stuff. And we talked about things and patterns that we've seen within our own family. And it was so eye-opening when we were in it, and heavy.
Oh, it was so heavy to go through that program and have to do I just remember doing the genogram and just having to identify the patterns within our big family unit and being like, oh my gosh, this is like
we're all jacked up.
Like we're all messed up. No wonder why we're here. But I think that, like Courtney shared, is really working in child welfare, working in even at Taco Bell, it really served its purpose. You hear now, how you always know your purpose based off of what you've done all your life, the little things you've done all your life. And I remember thinking, Taco Bell, how's this serving me? But did it teach a lot of lessons? And we did have really great bosses that understood where we were. I just felt like God really kind of had his hand on us the entire time. No, I know he did. Yeah. Because just the people that he aligned with us to be able to do the things we did. And I shared, I was a single parent when I transferred from Chico back here to be around family and support me with my son, and commuting back and forth to Fresno and still being able to hold those full-time hours. But I learned a lot in working Taco Bell and then transitioning to child welfare and working with people. And I had the experience of being a former foster youth, so working with children in care. And then I also had the experience of, living with an addict and, really seeing it from a parent's lens and really working with families and seeing removal is always the last thing that you want to do. Yeah. And, how could we really support this family, and really looking, it's not the family they just didn't land here. This has been a progression. Right. Families struggle, and a lot of times when you get to this point of intervention, it's because it's been so long and there's a lot going on. And so really, really being able to have that lens and that education background really served its purpose in doing the work we did. And the advocacy piece was huge, to have people to stand behind you. And they're, and people were like, you guys are great social workers. And we didn't really see it like that. It was just a really humble and really advocating for what was right. Looking at families and seeing hey, maybe they don't have, this big lavish home to their children to return home to, but they're doing their best they can. And that's what our law says. If we all had to have great homes, mansions for our 5 children or so to return home to. I don't have 5 children, but how many children would be in care, but that is really where the lens of, the community sometimes thinks of is hey, they should be removed because, oh my gosh, did you see where they live? Well, that's the realities. That's the realities of poverty, Right. And so I think it just really opened us up. And we always say we have a different lens that most people do not have. Right. It serves, it's great, but then sometimes it's not so great. It's this constant assessment. It's just a skill you just don't turn off now. And so
you can't turn it off.
You just can't turn off.
But you just know, you just know too much.
Yes.
And those are the assessment skills, right? It comes from working with families for long periods of time and seeing those levels. Miriam served 8 years working for child welfare. I served 18. Ooh. And so my transition was very different. Yes. And we worked side by side. We worked in the same office.
Yes.
We were both field social workers at the same time. And we had great memories because we got to work together, because folks always ask us don't you guys get tired? You guys get along working together? We're yes, we get along working together. Yeah. But I'm sure a lot of that came from our own bond, because when you have trauma bonds, when you're dealing with things from a young age, you know, your sibling bond is probably one of the strongest bonds anyway. Right. And we know that, and there is, you know, data that backs that up, especially from a child welfare lens. And I think working in the foster care lens, we've seen that time and time again. But then we worked together and we really became even more passionate about the community involvement, the community awareness about what is going on in your own backyard.
Yeah.
You know, when you work any kind of like emergency response, like child welfare, like law enforcement or fire, you see the worst of the worst. But you also see recovery. You see the flower bloom, you know, when there is nothing. You see children and families reunified. You see an opportunity to speak hope into people. But it also depends on who you're working with. We were very passionate about about our work. And so if you got us as social workers, you knew we were going to work very hard for you for a family unit. And there's social work is, you know, as child welfare was one system working with a multitude of systems like law enforcement, courts, and those kind of things. But it really did allow us to give back to our community in a way that I don't think is talked about as much. We have a lot of complexities within Tulare County. We are demographically, we have two extremes. We have the extreme impoverished, you know, families or socioeconomic status, and then you have the really wealthy. So demographically, and then we're rural, right? So we're spread out so we're mountainous, you know, you've got all these different things that I later looked at. Starting out as a social worker, I didn't really pay attention to those things. But you quickly learn, like, what is going on? Like, why do we have the same type of cases over and over again? At the time when we both got started, methamphetamine was huge. It was like imploding. Like, we couldn't get a grip on it with families. And then the magnitude of it, or like the ripple effect, were these extreme difficult cases. I mean, when you talk about complexity, it was very complex. But what no one was talking about was how did we in Tulare County get to this place? And all of it plays a part. So you have more than, I mean, at this time right now, I think the last time I checked, it was over 50% of our population is receiving some kind of governmental assistance. That tells you a lot. I during COVID, I want to say it was like 52%, 52 or 54. And so what that tells me immediately is that we are in a community or a county that has great needs. So when you break it down, if you are a family and you need to feed your family, you may do some things that are not legal or it may even be criminal to support your family. And those are the hard conversations that we don't often have from a community perspective. There's a lot of opportunity
too for those in lower poverty areas. Yeah.
Yes. Right. And so being social workers working in child welfare, we've seen that you've seen that face value. We saw it, we dealt with it. The stories that children tell you, I mean, it just was mind blowing sometimes. And then it was like the conversations that were constantly having to be had when it comes to advocacy. And, you know, these families have done these awful things, but foster care is also not, it's a system. It was never created to raise children completely. Right. It was supposed to be temporary. And then you have this other huge issue that's on the back end where you have children literally being in care for the entire duration of their life, their childhood life. And so I think that really continued to light a fire in both Miriam and I when we talk about community and community service and how do we serve our community, but it's not just going out and doing the direct service, but it is advocacy. It is seizing the opportunities to advocate and to know this has to be said. This has to be talked about.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah.
It's not often talked about. And yet you have so many people out there who are serving in some kind of capacity as far as like that social worker capacity, or even like law enforcement or fire department too, because they are seeing that first response as well. And it feels very heavy.
That's one of the things that we wanted to do with this podcast is bridge the gap. Because, once I started doing business here in Tulare County and meeting the people, and, there's an anger you have when you grow up, without, you know what I'm saying? So you think everybody is a certain way, but then when you're, rubbing elbows with these people and you're like, oh, they're not like that.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
So we all want the same thing, but there's a disconnect.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Huge.
A huge disconnect.
Huge.
So we're trying to do our part and help bridge the gap between that and bringing people on you, like how you guys are talking about what you're talking about. That first of all is going to let another young person know that, hey, they did it.
Yeah.
They came from similar circumstances, right? And then other people see it too, like, oh wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that, or I didn't know this, So we all got to do our part. And I didn't know a lot of that stuff. Speaking of trauma, right? Like, there's a lot of things I don't like. We just don't ask, right? And a lot of things I learned, like, and Jude told me, like, a little about, your dad and stuff. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know, I didn't know that was about, oh, that makes sense. And you don't find it until you grow up.
Yeah.
Right.
And stuff that you don't even question. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know half of my family's fathers growing up. Like, I didn't even really, I never thought of it.
Yeah.
There was enough. One thing we had was love. We
Right.
had love,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So it's like
in one way or another.
yeah. So
you
it's
felt
like
it.
so it's like you didn't question much, you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, that's an amazing story. That's crazy. So from there, where are you guys currently at now?
Okay. Career-wise, I've just transitioned over to the College of Sequoias,
Yes.
and serving as one of 3 deans of student services. So I am brand new to my role. I'm like on month 3.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying every bit of it.
Enjoying it, huh?
Yes, the higher education world is so exciting. It's another aspect of giving back to community too. It makes me excited to be able to work and really provide opportunity, especially in Tulare County, since we only have, the junior college here. And how difficult it is for people to pursue education, with all the things that come with being in I would say the extremes of the socioeconomic status in Tulare County, when we have so many challenges when it comes to poverty and like the poverty mindset and those kind of things, and just the generations that have, somehow landed here. And so I think having and working in the community college space really just is so exciting, because we get to give back in that way. So I am brand new to my role, and Miriam can talk about her.
Yeah.
What does that role mean though? What does it mean to do?
So for me, what does the role mean to me, or what am I doing?
No, yeah. What are you doing
Specifically? Okay. So I currently oversee a couple of departments at the college. So I oversee financial aid, and I oversee admissions and records. And so they are in charge of like the transcripts and finalizing grades, and just exactly what it sounds, admissions and records. So financial aid and admission and records, I feel like, are like the start and stop. You know, it's like you have to start there in order to just even get moving. And so those are probably one of the strongest departments, like one of the hardest departments, because there's a lot going, a lot of moving parts. And then I also oversee a TRIO department, and that department really serves from a high school lens. And it's a federal grant that's funded to really pursue students who may come from a lower socioeconomic background, or they're maybe first generation, and it really allows for I would say, targeting those students to really show that there's a pathway to higher education to really support it. It adds additional services. So I have a director that goes out and it does like specific targeted work with a certain group of students that really allows for them to have opportunity. When we talk about equity, and I think that's when we're talking about equity, when, it's like affording people opportunities that they would not have, and giving folks a fighting chance. And I feel like TRIO really does that. It's through the lens of high school though. So they may start as low as 8th grade, just having the conversation with specific populations or specific targeted areas. But it really is to prepare students. And so, and it's, since I'm so new to it, I'm still learning to it and excited because they get to do things like go tour college campuses and do like fun things together. And so I'm excited because that's my personality and I want to go to.
Yes.
So my new director is like excited because I told her I'd like to go with her. I want to see what that looks like. I want to be a part of that. And so that's what I'm doing on a day-to-day. On the other side, probably my other largest responsibility is I serve as the chair of a resolution advocacy department. And so that really is all things resolution advocacy. So any kind of behavioral interventions that need to take place, things happen all the time. So if there's, misconduct or any academic issues, that kind of stuff, we serve in a RAD team. That's the resolution. That's the acronym for it. And we talk about the referrals that come through. So if there was an altercation on campus and it involved 2 students, we are going to talk about that. And then we're going to also try to meet with those students and figure out like, how can we help them be successful? Or does this raise to the level of, this may not be for you because this is a huge challenge of yours. Right. So that probably is a huge chunk of what I'm doing on a day-to-day is really talking about like those situations, and stuff happens all the time on campus. And so that team, that department comes together, and there are different areas of the college that come together to really talk about those referrals that come through, whatever they are. And so that's probably the gist of my day-to-day of what I'm doing.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
It is a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
So I also serve at College of The Sequoias as the director, and I came on, I actually did some work with there's 2 specialized programs there that everyone is always like, what is that? Why is it on the college campus? But it's our foster care and kinship program, and then our Yes ILP program. Those are 2 separate programs in one. Yes ILP is Youth Empowerment Strategies for Success, and ILP is Independent Living Program, both serving foster youth in some capacity. So we serve both Tulare and Kings County, and so we work directly with the county. So I'm still connected with child welfare services, both in Tulare and Kings County now. And so one program serves resource parents, and that's the new name for foster parents, any out-of-home placement for relatives or foster parents that want to take in foster care, take in foster children. So my program provides all the trainings that are mandated. So that is something that I do with that part of the program. And the other is Yes ILP, and that is serving our foster youth on and off campus. So that's our 16 to 21. So again, we're really heavily connected with the county. We collaborate a lot with child welfare services in both counties to serve those youth that are in high school and as they transition to adulthood. So we do have a location on campus, a specific office or safe space for our current or former foster youth. So again, it kind of serves both 16 all the way to 21. So they're there through that transition. And so we provide all the workshops for those youth as well. And so we meet all the time. There's certain mandates that we have to follow as a county and adhere to. That's in our welfare and institution codes that say, hey, these youth should learn these things that we would teach our own children.
Right.
Things like employment, education, financial literacy, and what we call daily living skills. And now the new one is housing. But daily living skills could just be like, how do you, budget your bank account, or how do you cook? The things that we just teach our own kids. So my program is charged with really providing those resources to that population all the way to the age of 21. And then once they transition to the college, really supporting their educational journey there, the additional support. Again, we're very passionate about foster kids, and more so because we know how trauma could really, really, it set them back. And typically where we see a traditional student do well and get in for the 2 years and, go on to transfer out, we don't see that. We don't see those successes as often, or it's delayed for a period of time. Right. So really, really advocating on their behalf and just being on the college campus to be able to do that work has been a blessing. That I think is the best part of the job. Yeah. And then the foster care and kinship program, it's great. I work with being able to train or have people train out the resource parents to, really take in and provide those loving homes to our children in care in the community. Right. That's really what it's about. And so just really being up to date on like the mandates, the new laws and legislation that comes out is really important for both of those programs. What's new to me, and I've been there for 8 years now at COS, is our basic needs program, which is our giant marketplace now. And that came about in about 2021, I believe that came down. And that really, really charged community college to say, hey, there needs to be a centralized location where a student that has a basic need can go to, instead of going here, there, and everywhere on campus to get their needs met. And also it kind of comes down to what it just kind of flows perfectly to what we've done in child welfare. Right. Is, someone shouldn't have to share their story with you, and they shouldn't have to share their story again with so-and-so over here. It's very traumatizing. Yeah. So if there can be one location, one person that they can meet with to kind of help advocate and kind of get them along their journey and help them along their journey would be great. And so now we're seeing the shift in community college and college in general saying, hey, we need some social work happening here. We need to see that here in the community college level. And so, we got the program. We started building the program in 2021, and I was charged with leading that, and it's been great. It's been birthing a child, is what I say, for over a year. And so we did our ribbon cutting in October, and everyone's seen the beautiful ribbon cutting, but the pain labors that took place for a year and a half before that, and building that out have been real. Sacrifices on myself and my college, and my vice president has been super supportive, and the district overall was very supportive in what we were going to do here at the community college. And it looks different for every community college, but I'm so glad that, we had the vision. They really let me lead that and take that vision on. And I think because I had that background and the lens of like, what would this look like? God really gave the vision of what this should look like on, the College of Sequoias campus. And so I'm really, really happy to have that. We have the one-stop location, and one thing we thought about is like, what would this really look like, and a lot of times our students are, struggling and they're eligible for some public benefits. And so we wanted to bring in someone from Tulare Works to be housed there. So we have someone there 2 days a week, thanks to the partnership with Tulare County Health and Human Services. So again, all the collaboration just to really serve our community. Because again, I always go back to who are we serving? What does our community look like? What is our demographics here? And, when Courtney talked about 50% are on public benefits, those are the families that are coming to community colleges. Those are the people that are struggling, to make it, and they're working full time. They have children at home. They're first generation. They cannot go away to college, so how can we make how can we reduce those barriers that they continue to, struggle to just to get that education, to give back to the community, because that's what we want to do. We want to be able to give back to our community and build into the communities that we come from. So I'm really, really excited about the program and seeing kind of where it goes. And we're still in the beginning phases. And every day I wake up and I'm like, God, what is the vision for the next? Tell me where you want me to take this next, because it really comes down to like, how do we do this and do it well? And again, I'm really excited for, our district for backing it up. I hear, we're very strong in getting this started, whereas other districts are, getting started and they're starting it and it doesn't look the same. So I'm really happy to see that we are kind of up there.
I just have to give kudos, and I have to dote on her a little bit. And I just want to take it a little bit back, because this vision of this giant marketplace birthed in her before she even knew what giant marketplace was going to be. And so she and I had conversations. We, if you haven't picked up, we're very spiritually led. We really, define a lot of the decisions that we make based off of our faith and what we believe and what we know to be true when walking this walk with God. And so, but also recognizing like the needs and where like we have to show up too in order to make these things happen. And so Miriam and I were having a conversation about housing, and that it kind of unfolded in housing
for foster
youth, right? Because the pains that we know for, that population are so deep. And, we feel so passionate about it. And because we've seen it, we see what it does. We see that, once you graduate or once you become 18 and you're a foster youth, that's just not it. It sets people back. That trauma sets folks back. And so we've seen it. And so using our voice in the right way. And so when we first started talking about it, it was really about housing insecurity, because it's prevalent everywhere. But it was really around the population of foster youth. And Miriam was, when I think it was the chancellor's office that really said, community colleges will have like a basic needs center. And before it was even Miriam's, she was already seeing the vision. Like before she had even been appointed to do this work, to build it, to work alongside a team to really get it going, she was so, it was so real in her that it bothered her to the point where she couldn't stop thinking about it. And we were talking about it and like just really visioning what this would look like before it even became a thing, I feel like. And how it came about was literally faith tells us that God is really listening because how it fell into place was nothing short of a miracle, I feel like, because she had already had a department that she was looking after. She said FKCE and ILP. And so she was already overseeing a big ship, and so, but this was something that she felt very passionate about, and we talked about it, and something came about and she wasn't going to be able to do it. And she was like, I don't know what this is going to look like. And so she and I had a conversation. I said, just pray about it. If it's meant for you, it will come to pass. Yeah. And I don't even know when it was later, months later, maybe. And then here this opportunity presents itself, like almost to the point where it fell in her lap. Wow. Like, would you be willing to do this? Wow. And she automatically seized it and was like, yes. Yeah. And I remember we talked about it and she had to put together like a draft of a plan and we worked together on a weekend. Yes. Like she started building the outline. Like? Yeah. She started, right. She started building the outline. We were on the phone talking about it. And I was like, I'm coming over. Like, I'm going to come over. Let's talk this out because those are the things that we want for our community. Like we want that for people. We want people to be able to go to school and not worry about if I'm going to eat later on. Like, do I have to make a decision? I have to go to school and I have to go to work, but I'm not making enough. And so can I go and maybe get some food?
All the way down to the name of the giant marketplace. We went back and forth on names. And one thing that I really stood myself and the district was, we wanted it to be something where it was so centered around students and the stigma there of asking for help and asking for assistance was not going to be there. Like, so taking like it from, this is not just the food pantry. It's not just a place where you go where you get help. This is open to all students that have a barrier to get to their next level.
Yeah.
And so when we said the giant marketplace, it just took that away. We really wanted somewhere warm, inviting. It was very dignified. We really wanted something very dignified for students because it is a challenge. It's a challenge to ask for help. It's a struggle to say, hey, my family is struggling and, we're coming here for that support. And so even the location, we didn't even know the location. My VP
We were
is
dreaming
such
big.
great. And we were I just even was like, hey, the location really needs to be thought about too. Because when we have something where students have to kind of do a walk of shame, we even were like, man, that's a challenge, for people. Like how are we going to really reach the masses without it being so like shameful? And so I'm really glad that it's kind of off campus. It's in a way where students can kind of come in. It looks like a marketplace and really, really be proud that they have the support for their next journey, there. Whether it's going to, I'm getting my associates and I'm going to go directly into the work field or whether I'm going to transfer out and go and get my degree. It was really something that really was led. And I share it all the time is, I was there on the campus for I've been there for 8 years. The last 2 years have been more of building the giant marketplace. But the time before that, my programs have been more community led. It's been more about the community, the services that I do in the community, working with a lot of community partners, really for foster and homeless students and our resource parents. But I just am so thankful to God for hiding me for such a time as this. And that's really what it came about is everyone would be like, what do you do? Like, we're a program, where is that? What is that? And then when Giant Marketplace came about, it was for all students. And I said, I'm so thankful. Thank you for hiding me and allowing me to get to know the community college because it is a shift.
Right.
It's a shift from county to community college.
Yeah.
It was a big shift.
Culture shift.
The culture shift.
Yeah.
And it's a great shift.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. But when you're used to being where you were and trauma bonding with your people at the county and just being so comfortable and confident in who you are and what you do because it just comes so naturally. Shifting over to the community college was a different shift. It was a different type of social work.
Yeah.
And so I just was like, oh, thank you so much because it allowed me to get to know this is the purpose.
Right.
Like when Giant Marketplace, when Basic Needs came about, I was like, now I know what you've been doing. Like I know the purpose now. I know those breadcrumbs all along the way has led to this purpose, to do this great work. Although all the other work was great, but this right here is what I was meant to do. And so it's been great. That's what I've been doing. It's definitely growing pains. And so I am the director. So I still continue to oversee all 3 programs and really the day-to-day duties of that work and working with staff. And just really, we have a coordinator who meets with students for basic needs or for the Giant Marketplace, really supporting them in the case management piece and just really balancing budgets, all the things they don't teach you in social work. But all the things.
Yeah.
They don't say you're going to eventually do this. But the big
Right.
shift came from, we were line social workers, meaning we did the day-to-day work.
Right.
And the day-to-day work is so important because it shows you what you need to advocate for when you become administration. When you're in an administrative role, you know what you're there doing.
Right.
You don't lose that vision. You don't lose that passion. You know what it's for, and you can advocate on that behalf. You know what you're talking about.
Right.
That's right.
And that I think was the biggest piece of kind of growing into where we are now is that we didn't just land this. There was a process, and everything is a process. God is a God of process, and it doesn't come overnight. And so I think that was the big thing is like kind of seeing it come to this place. And so now I do a lot more administrative stuff, but it's still good. It's still good because it still meets the needs of the community, you know?
Yeah.
And if I didn't do it, who would?
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, it was appointed to you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a
Yes.
crazy. I didn't know that's how it came about.
It came about, yes.
There was some major growing pains.
There was
and there was
some
a lot
major
of prayer
growing
and focus too about wanting it to be, what it needed to be. And Miriam feeling very strongly about that, it would create space for conversation and advocacy, but it also would create space for safety.
Yes.
Yeah.
it would create space for safety. And I think that was something that we often, like, those those nighttime calls. And I was still working in child welfare at the time. And at the time I was serving as the deputy director overseeing the entire program of child welfare. And, that also opened me up to a lot of things too. And so we often talked about what she was doing was great work, because these are the things that community needs. Like, these are the things, safety, just feeling safe enough to come and say, like, I need, and and the community college gives a pathway to hope. Like, the fact that if you step foot on that campus, you have a pathway of hope, because you can pursue something, whatever it is that you're set out to pursue, but you now have hope. But hope can easily be diminished if barriers are in place, right? Like, so many of us have barriers, and we see it all the time with students, they've got things, they're taking care of family or whatever it is. Yeah. Those are the barriers. Right. And a lot of times that's what stops people from being able to pursue their educational path, is because those barriers are in place. And very much so what Giant Marketplace is offering is taking away from some of those barriers. I mean, we can't eliminate everything, but it is at least addressing some of those barriers that oftentimes prevents students from moving forward.
And the great thing is, too, it's not just on campus. Our charge was that we connected students to off-campus resources, mental health,
food pantries,
off
shelters.
Campus, emergency housing. We're not charged with just serving students on campus. It's how do we connect them to things to sustain themselves off campus? And that's the big thing, is it's not just necessarily, and that was right up my alley. We have, working child welfare really allowed us to really build really strong partnerships and community collaboration, because we did so much work collaborating and working with professionals in the community, parenting, churches, all of those family resource centers that are in Tulare County that really are strategically placed in like our rural areas. We have one here in Visalia, or we have one in Visalia. We had one in Tulare, but really where people can go and get support right there in their community, voluntarily. So we already had those connections, and so it really. It made sense to, build it and then still kind of tag on to those resources at the community college level. Because, again, these are the same people within the community. It's not just a child welfare thing that we were doing. This could definitely shift over here. So that's really, I think, the good thing is it all came together. And all serves a great purpose.
And it looks great. Y'all did a great job.
Yeah, they did. Our people, and again, I had a vision for what it would be, but I didn't know it would be so great. And of course, I didn't have an eye for the actual physical space and how, our dean of facilities, he did a great job of kind of like what this space would look like, really taking the vision and just kind of turning it into what it is. So I can't take credit for that.
Bringing it to life, huh?
But I can't read it. But it is. And so the marketplace portion of it does allow students to have the autonomy to, see the groceries, pick the items that they want. More of a grocery like feel, as opposed to a one size fits all, because that's a thing with trauma as well, is, people have their own, dietary needs and things like that. And they have their own relationship with food. So if you tell me I get this for my family and my family doesn't eat that, then what? Like, this isn't going to serve me, and so really, really looking at, the need of a student. And so it's the holistic approach. I really, really love it. It's great.
So exciting. Because it feeds our social worker needs. That's why.
It feeds my social worker need, definitely.
You could tell you guys really love what you do,
It feeds it so much. I love it. And Courtney mentioned too, we do, we try to stay connected with the community in other ways. I sit on the Tulare County Child Abuse Prevention Board. So although I no longer work in child welfare, really being able to be the voice for children and families in that lens still. And so our board meets and we, discuss, prevention and advocacy for child abuse awareness throughout the county. That's huge. And that's how I stay connected as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I do teach adjunct for Fresno Pacific as well, social work, which again, it kind of feeds that need in me too, to kind of stay, it keeps me grounded. And it's, when you are at the level of like doing some of the admin work, it's a little different because you don't really have that day-to-day connection with people. And so, being able to feed back into future social workers and really kind of sharing experiences and teaching out has helped a lot as well.
Yeah.
Feed that need for myself and for them too, I'm sure.
Yeah. She's excellent. I've watched her do work, and I tell her all the time I'm her biggest fan. I want to be like her when I grow up.
I love the support you two give to each other, man. I can just tell by the way you guys look at each other.
She's my best friend.
Yep, 100%.
That's amazing.
That's right. And then there's the third one.
Yes,
our
we're
youngest
really,
sibling.
really connected.
What about inspiration? Is there like a book or a person that for that pivotal moment in your life that changed it?
I want to
and
say,
made you want to go further.
I don't know if it's been one specific person. Like we've been in it for a long time now. I feel like we've been in the game for a long time, Yeah. But I feel like I don't know that there was one specific person. What I can say, looking back over time, I can honestly say that God aligned us with some pretty awesome mentors. Like over time, whether they were for a time or for a lifetime, there were people that were just kind and like would just spend like that would give their time and talk to us about like, we talk about it in like such a positive light of where we've come from, but there was a downside too, like really trying to fight these demons, like of like, is this really what life is about? And like dealing with our own traumas while working, with complexities. And we had people of all different like backgrounds, ages, just came and would walk alongside us and encourage us. Like my story is so hilarious of how I became the deputy director, because I, for such a long time, did not want to promote. Like, I think I did field work for like 8 or 9 years, like maybe 10 years. I don't even know, before I had a manager come and say, Courtney, like it's time. Like I had two managers at the time who were working, and they had we had all started at the same time, and they had kind of climbed really fast. And I was like, no, I like what I'm doing. I like that. I like working with families. And I remember two specifically were like, can you just apply for like the lead position? And I was like, no. Like I was in grad school at the time, and I was like, no, I like what I'm doing. I really liked working with families. I feel like I had like this strong pull to work with families, but they saw things in us that we didn't see in ourselves, like that we didn't maybe even think about or maybe didn't see in ourselves, that really promoted and encouraged us to keep moving forward, to allow ourselves to dream outside of what we were. Because once we got into our careers, we were like, we made it. This was it. Like this, that was it. We bought homes really early. Didn't know what we were doing there.
No.
Right.
Had no idea. I don't even know how that happened. But the realtor, like we got referred by a friend who referred us to a realtor. And then she like went to bat for us without us even knowing. So like when you talk about a person or a book, I think it was a combination of things. I think God really provided pathways and like opened doors for us and sat us in rooms that I was like, what am I doing here? Like how did I get here? And aligned us with people who saw something and really took time to really help us grow and build, and made it okay, would say things like, it is okay for you to move forward, or, and sometimes you need to hear that. And then we were that for each other too. So that was the other piece too, is like we had to be okay with, advancing forward in what we were doing and feeling good about it, because each step was like, it was like, entering into a whole new realm, and we had no idea what we were doing. And really thinking like, that's not for us. That's for like, I don't know,
that's
the next
for
person.
Better.
Yeah. And so I remember like really literally people literally pushing me and saying like, you need to do this. You need to apply for this next level. You need to apply to be a supervisor. And I was like, no, I'm good here. Leave me here. And they're like, you're already doing it. You've been doing this work for so long. we need your skills. And then it really became the conversation of responsibility. When you hold a skill set that really is a calling to do some things and you don't do it, there's a conversation about responsibility. And sometimes it's a burden of responsibility too, because you're like, I always joke with Miriam, I'm like, I just want to stay small, leave me here. But it really wasn't, it really was a responsibility. Right. And I even remember I had conversations with God. I've had conversations with God about like, I just want to be little, like leave me here, you know? Yes. And God, clearly I could hear the conversation. Like I could hear God telling me like, no, like there is a greater calling. Like you're not doing this for you. You're doing this for the masses. You're doing this for people who didn't have an opportunity, who need to see representation, who need to feel like it's okay to fumble and then get back up. Right. You know, and so those are things, and there were some really strong people that were peers of ours, people we still keep up with, some of our bosses that would literally came and sat down and was like, no, you need to do this. When Miriam transitioned from the county, like the director at the time congratulated her, was like, we are, and told her, if you ever want to come back, we will take you back in a heartbeat. You need to hear that. Yeah, you need to hear people cheering for you that are in high places. Right. And so I think there wasn't just like one person. I mean, I think our family always was there too. And we shared about our mom and her addiction, and there were a lot of ugly things that happened with her, but she was also a huge cheerleader too about, you know, moving us forward, and was always super proud. She was always super proud of what we were doing. And unfortunately, you know, there were the ugly side, you know, she struggled with her situation and she just died early on in life. And so she did not get to see, you know, like her seed planting from a very early age, but that did serve us. I mean, there's, like I said, there's another side, but there were things that she did, I feel like, that maybe were intentional, maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but I'm glad that she did it. I'm glad that she instilled those things in us and really allowed us to dream outside of what we knew. Yeah. So there were, I feel like for me, and Miriam can speak for herself, but I feel like for me, there was a line of people in each of our seasons that really encouraged and really like allowed us to even have like the difficult conversations. Like, I'm scared. Yeah. I'm scared to take, before I crossed over into the executive world, I was a supervisor, and I was like, I'm good here too. Then I became a manager in child welfare services, and I was a manager for a month before I was like recruited to become an executive. And that was just for a division manager role. And I fought against it. I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm scared. Like, I don't know what this really looks like. I don't know that I can make it in corporate world. I'm a Black woman in a not so Black community, you know, those were conversations that I had with myself. I had with Miriam. I had with people I trusted. I had with God. And then, you know, faith steps in and says like, you know, you'll do what you need to do and be okay. And you'll be confident about it. And you know, you'll do what you need to do. But I needed that. I needed, you know, people that I trusted that I could lean on and have those conversations with. And so I think it's been a combination of people that have walked us alongside us and have encouraged us. And then we, in turn, a willingness to give back to people who are, you know, maybe in the same position. Yeah. We've taken on interns. We've taken on just people that we've just really wanted to mentor because of that. Like, we had so many people pour into us. And so I couldn't say that there was one person. And then I think ultimately for me, all of the people who have worked so hard before us, our ancestors, our, you know, activists, you know, that have just really like gave their lives, you know, literally right, for an opportunity. And this doesn't even have to be about race. I mean, just an opportunity, period. And then you factor in all those other things like race and all the pieces, like being a woman. That's what that responsibility conversation comes into, like that burden of responsibility, because like there are so many people that did so much before us to create space for us to do great things. Right. And if we don't seize that, then what? Right. Then what?
Right.
So that for me, that's who, I mean, I could name drop like several people that I'm so grateful for.
Yeah.
But there were so many people at different seasons. So that's for me as far as inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah. The same. I mean, I would love to say that there was some book that really outside of besides the Bible, which, you know, growing up, you know, and living in that time, it was such a whirlwind, you know, kind of from high school to college. And I just I always imagined myself reading and there being some motivational during that time. And we just didn't have that. It was true survival. Now it's a little different. But true leadership really, really, you know, leaders are called by God, and, you know, it does come with a great responsibility, and, you know, and there's a lot of sacrifice there. And I never seen myself with being that. And so like Courtney shared, so many people kind of seen things in us that we didn't see in ourselves. I'm still very humble. It took me a long time to say, I direct programs, whereas I just like, I work here, you know, because I really, really want people to know it's not about the title. It's really about the work we do with communities and the impact that we make, you know, in serving our staff and those that, you know, the students and our community as a whole. So, you know, for me, I think the biggest person who advocated, you know, for the biggest turn for us, we had family, of course. Courtney's always been my biggest advocate and true person of always. I still even have like little notes on my desk she's written. But we had a high school counselor to really advocate for us when we were really in a really bad time, you know, where we were fighting the court for, you know, what it looked like for us and really, you know, Courtney had just turned 18 when, you know, child welfare intervention happened for me and Danielle. And I was 16 years old. Courtney and I are 2 years apart. So just the thought of not being able to be placed with family, we were really fighting to stay with each other. And, you know, we were a really odd and rare case where, you know, our high school counselor came in and kind of really advocated on behalf of like how mature we were, because we were working at that time and we were just doing, you know, we were already taking care of ourselves. Bottom line, you know, with the support of, you know, extended family, like Aunt Jewel has always been there. You know, my Aunt Juanita would, you know, jump in when she could. And, my Aunt Linda, like there were a family that were able to do, but there's only so much you can do when a parent has rights. And so, you know, when the shift did happen, we were pretty much running the household already. So, you know, for a juvenile court to say, yes, you as a new 18-year-old, I think Courtney had just turned 18. No, I know she did. And I had just turned 16, just started working. We proved that we were strong enough to do it on our own without having to move out of our apartment. And we could be on our own with her. And so, you know, our high school counselor really advocated for that for us because he seen clearly something in us that we didn't see in ourselves again. And, you know, he even went to bat, you know, even
drove us to court.
Yeah, he drove us to court. But I even had a math teacher that really couldn't understand why, you know, math was not my priority, where work was more of my priority. And I recall him telling that math teacher, it's like, she has to work. This is not her priority. You know, she's doing the best she can, like lay off. You know, and having those people, you know, in the educational realm to really see people in their circumstances, as opposed to like, this is what you need to do. You know, that's not life. Life happens to people. Life happens to children. Life happens to young adults. And, you know, you need to meet people where they are. And where where we were in that moment was truly like survival. And so being able to have someone kind of back that up and still see the potential of moving forward was like really huge for me. But there was, again, like Courtney said, so many people. You know, I always thank my boss at Taco Bell. She did a really, really great job of just saying like, you know, just giving me the hours that, you know, really aligned with my schedule at Fresno State, and me being a single mom. You know, those were the people that God really, really aligned in our path and really gave us favor and grace, you know, for the journey that we were on, not knowing where we were going. So I just think, you know, but now, of course, there's all kinds of books. There's all kinds of things that I do to feed myself and really kind of looking back and healing those parts that, you know, because when you're on the path of, you know, getting where you need to go, you're not looking back. It's
Right.
survival in that moment. And I think that, that has been our journey is there was no looking back.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I no longer have to look back. I can look back and start healing those pieces that, we didn't necessarily get to touch because we're humans still too. And so those are those pieces that, we did a lot of work in the journey of work, and our educational and career world has really healed parts of us, but there's still other things that we're working on. So I rely heavily on the Bible. I read it a lot. I read a lot about boundaries and things like that. Those are the things that kind of keep me going too.
Yeah.
That's good. You said something right there. Like now you can look back, right? And a lot of times, I see that as a big problem in the Black community.
Yeah.
The poorer part, I should say, is that I want to get people to the point to where let's get the money first, and then we can afford to do therapy. We can afford to do this. We can good therapy, not
Yeah.
because there's a difference,
There
right?
is
When you got good insurance,
Huge
they
difference.
treat you different. It's
Yeah.
it's
It
a
is
different
huge
quality.
difference.
And you just said that right there. Now you're able to go back and heal yourself from
Yes.
that because we're coming from extreme conditions. It
You
takes
do.
an extreme, act to change the whole situation.
It really does. It really does. And, we have sought therapy for ourselves, and there's seasons of therapy. And I think, for a lot of times, especially for the Black culture and many other cultures as well, they don't really see therapy as a tool that it should be. They don't believe that it's useful. Whereas, anything.
Or there's a misconception of
There's
what
Yeah,
it-
we just think you're
what-
crazy.
what
Oh,
it-
you gotta be crazy.
Or what it should be.
What it should be.
What it should
There's-
be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like I went and I tried it and it didn't work. Well, there is a part where we have a responsibility too. Therapy is only an hour, a week or so. So the work really is outside of that session,
Right.
And so really, really being able to see that and, being mature enough to know that when you're going with intent for yourself.
Right.
And although you don't know what you don't have to have the answers, but knowing that there is work to be done.
Right.
And that you're open to that work. And it's always ugly before it gets better. And those are the pieces I think we see in a lot of different cultures that, it's the work.
Yeah.
It's the work, it's work and it's hard work, healing the trauma, because it's not just the trauma from our past, our childhood, but sometimes it's those generational traumas that kind of tag onto us. We have a whole, line of it.
Yeah.
Just Courtney mentioned, being the only Black exec, that's hard.
Yeah.
And being able to be in a safe space to have those conversations is really, really important. But now and like I said, the season of when you go and you do the work and, you definitely do the healing parts for yourself and learn that it's okay. Like, as far as Black, we always hear Black women being these independent women, very strong and focused and led, but why?
Right.
Why are we like that?
Right.
And being able to hey, we're not superhumans. We are just people too.
Yeah.
And how do we heal those pieces where those misconceptions?
Right.
Yeah.
That we just want to be.
Yes,
Or that that's all there is.
that is the drive for
Yeah.
us. And so that's, I do a lot of work around that, of the boundaries, the strong boundaries, being able to pause. That's one book that I'm actually reading, Pause, Reset. And just looking for peace. Like, how do you pause? How do you reset yourself? How do you take the time to not say, we just have to move forward? Because again, in survival, that's what we did. We kept going. You just keep going.
Right.
And you don't look back. You don't take the time to rest. You don't take the time you don't really enjoy life, what God intended for us to do.
Yes.
Is to enjoy the life. So,
But you guys are doing it though. That's what's great about it, is that you change your narrative and you're setting and trailblazing a new path
absolutely.
for your kids, for your cousins, for your friends, everybody around you. You affect. I hear nothing but great things about you guys.
Thanks.
At around the campus and stuff. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. So last question. To the young Miriam, the young Courtney out there, thinking life is hopeless, working at Taco Bell.
Oh, geez. Those 10 cent raises, they get me every time.
Yeah. I'm a young, my parents just, I'm come from Mexican background. It's hopeless. Or I come from this background. It's hopeless. what are some words of advice? Or I'm a woman, and they never take me serious. What are some words of advice you can give a young person out there to pursuing their goals in life?
Well, I have a lot of advice.
Courtney is the best with advice.
I have so much.
PG though, PG.
No, totally PG. But I have a lot of advice because I think, we are our biggest critics, ourselves. So we will talk ourselves out of everything,
Right.
like before. And I think Miriam and I were just talking about this, where, having a strong foundation, whatever that means to the young Courtneys or the young Miriams, get around people who want to see you succeed. Mm-hmm. We hear the baseline stuff, like get around people who are already there, invest yourself into those things. But know that you're enough. I think we don't hear that often or enough. We don't hear that because you're just, you're on a path. And I think we were fortunate to have a strong faith foundation. And I think that's also what guided us along the way to know that like we can do more things,
right.
Because we had that faith foundation. But for folks who don't have a faith foundation or who don't have anyone that maybe talks or pours into you, you need that. And I think, that it's important to the young Courtney to hear that in 20 years, even if you didn't do all the things that you said you were going to do, as long as you put that foot forward, you can make it. You can do something. I'm a huge proponent of planning, like what's your 2-year and 5-year goal? Write it down. Even if it doesn't come to life, you have something that you're looking forward to. And someone shared that with me very early on in life too, is like, what are your goals? Like, and so that kind of birthed a process or a pattern or whatever you want to call it in me to write those things down, to really look forward to, even if you didn't achieve it. And so be graceful to yourself. We are hard on ourselves at a very young age because we're just trying to figure it out. Like if I could look back, some of the things I would have told myself is take a chill, don't be on this rat race all the time. And we were so focused, like nothing was going to stand in my path. And so in my earlier years, my early 20s, I missed a lot of things because I was so focused. And there's nothing wrong with being focused, but allowing myself some grace and telling myself that it's okay, that I will get to that next stage.
Right.
Probably the number one thing though is, whatever your faith is, have a connection that there is a connection to a higher power. We were born into that. And so we consider ourselves fortunate because it gives you something, it tells you like there's something more to life. And I think that also helped. And so whatever that faith is, that whatever you connect to, having that be part of your daily routine, whatever it is, but that's imperative. That's probably number one priority, is to have something that you're connected to outside of just like, like I'm just existing. Because I've talked to people where, they don't believe in anything. And so I'm like, well, what is your purpose?
Yeah.
What do you feel like your purpose is? And people are stumped. And I'm like, even if you're not connected to the same faith that I'm connected to, that's okay. We can still have a conversation, but be connected to something.
Right.
Be kind to yourself. I think that's the biggest thing, is being kind to yourself. And you will hear me say that a lot. Because we are hard on ourselves, and in our early years, our middle years, or, as parents, as young parents, as teenagers have it rough. They just have it rough right now.
Yeah.
They do. It's rough for anyone entering into puberty because things are happening and you're like, what's going on here? But then like society and all the things that have changed, like they have it rough. And so being really kind and a willingness to lean in, even when it hurts, and allow yourself to experience different things, and to know that it's okay to fall, but and maybe even, feel and have a pity party, but you cannot stay there. Don't unpack and live there. Fall, get back up. Even if it's 100 times,
Right.
That's okay. And I think we don't talk about that. We don't tell our kid. We don't do that. We don't tell our kids that. We don't say like, hey, you will fail.
Yeah.
But failing is part of the growing pains. You need to be able to fall, and you need the people that maybe are against you. You need all of that to help you see that you have it within you to survive and to thrive, not just survive, like you should thrive.
Yes.
And I think young Courtney did not know that Courtney now is in a really good space of just like I'm living my best life, you know?
Right,
I mean,
right.
and that's not to say that like life is not
great,
hard.
yeah.
Life is definitely hard, but the appreciation of things are so different versus early Courtney, who was like really focused on like making sure like all these things were lined up. And I wish those were the things that I knew at a very young age, to know that not only would I make it, and success is measured by different standards depending on who the person is.
Right.
We definitely measure success different. People would say that, oh, you're successful. And I would say, yeah, to you, I'm successful because that's the measure of standard of what I look like on the outside and what I've got and all the things. But for me, I'm successful because I made it to this age.
Yeah.
I survived. We talk about things. We've changed the narrative in our home about what it looks like to support one another, what mental health looks like, what substance abuse looks like, how important it is to change that, generation piece and to be honest with one another. Those were not things that I don't even know that we could have broached the conversation at such a younger age. So the advice that I would have given to myself is that you not only would be successful, but you were going to be okay. You were going to be in a place of peace.
Yeah.
And that's so paramount when you come from a background of chaos.
Right.
You don't really know how to enter into peace and to be okay with peace. That is a whole subject within itself, because if you've never seen it, you don't know what it is. You don't know how to enter there, and you don't know how to be at peace with being at peace. And then being okay with making large decisions, right? Like, I'm going to go buy a car today. Okay. I'm going to do that. Those are conversations. No, I'm serious. Like, those are the things, right? And so those are the pieces of advice that I would give to young folks is like, you know what? Be kind to yourself. Have a goal, have a mindset of whatever it is that you want to achieve, and don't let anyone talk you out of it. Like, you keep going. You do what you want to do. And if it doesn't work, pivot. Come back to the table, talk about it, and go on.
Right.
Be one with whatever faith that you're stuck to. Mine, I love me some Jesus. I cuss a little, but I love me some Jesus. And know that there are people out there that are for you and want you to succeed, and get around those people.
Right.
Don't waste your time willy-nilly around people who don't want things for you.
Right.
And probably the last thing is family. Your family, for the most part, you know who's for you within your family. Be around those people, but also be willing to have the conversations, and in a way where you're not tearing people down, but that you're really talking about how do we get past this.
Right.
If I have a qualm with Miriam, I want to be able to come to her and be like, this is out of love, but I need you to get with it. Right. Those are the things. And we should be able to have those conversations, because how will you continue to move forward and grow in life? Right. If you don't have people who are honest with you, who are willing to tell you where you are amazing, but also where you're not amazing, you're gonna walk around thinking like everything's great, and you may be struggling with some things that you need to address. And that takes some self-reflection, but it also takes those people around you who want better for you, who are willing to pray for you, who are willing to walk you through and have those conversations like, listen, you can have your pity party today, but you don't get to unpack and live there. Like, those are hard conversations to have, but it's important to have them. And you want that. I want that tribe around me. I want people to tell me like, you know what? You're not the nicest person today. So, I want that. And so those are the things that I would tell young people is like, be smart, be strategic about what you want, but also enjoy the life. Enjoy this life. You get to live once. Yeah. Life goes by very fast. And if you do not seize the day or seize the time or the season, you will get to a place of regret. Right. And that's one thing I don't want for myself is I tell Miriam all the time, I was like, I don't want to be 60 or 70 years old thinking of like, I'm regretting things that I didn't do, or I didn't give myself an opportunity to just try. So that's a lot of advice, and I always have advice. But I'm always willing to listen to advice too,
Right,
because I
right,
want
right.
somebody to pour into me too.
Yeah, definitely.
What about that young Miriam out there?
the young Miriam? Man, I have so much to say to her.
I love it.
Courtney is definitely the one that is very graceful and always has been, and I've always been the one harder on myself. So I would definitely tell her, life is a journey, and it's ups and downs. And it is a journey. And, for young people who are coming up, whether they are coming from a great background or whether they're coming from, one very similar to ours, the journey, that's not going to be the end of the journey. Like the journey goes on. There's going to be your highs and your lows through the journey. But definitely, identifying, like Courtney was sharing, those people who are very supportive of you, and not to say to make your head big or, to feed your ego, but, there's something about just one person believing in an individual. And that's all it takes. Statistics have shown it's just one person that can feed into a child. One person could really change the trajectory of someone. And I think that when you have it, luckily we had each other, and we had, so we fed off of each other all the time. But without that, who knows where we would have been? Because, it is hard to fight those inner thoughts when things are happening.
Right.
And a lot of people succumb to it. They succumb to those thoughts and they get stuck. But, we were never meant to stay stagnant. God has always meant for us to keep moving in the journey until our last breath. Yep. So, being able to be graceful and learn and grow and give yourself grace for failing and not being so perfect. I'm a very big person with organization, and things need to be a certain way, and I need to be right. And I will tell you, life taught me, the journey has been a journey. I definitely was the one who had the kid first, and I was young, and all those pieces. And so even though that was where I thought my journey was going, is I needed to be that way, it threw me off. It threw me off a lot. But being able to kind of get up and keep moving and keep growing, and knowing that it's okay to change. Your journey can change over time. And my journey at a young age, the 21-year-old Miriam was not the same 21-year-old person like my counterpart, whoever was, going to college and graduating and everything was great. Everyone's journey looks different, but it doesn't mean that you're not successful. It doesn't mean you're not going to get there. It is. And success looks, like Courtney shared, it looks different for everyone. Yeah. It's what you would like to measure success being. Success is not about the careers that we have. It's not about the money that we make. Great. Thank you, Lord, for, getting us to this space. Yeah. Yep. But it really, really comes down to being at peace and being able to, have your family and the joy, in our hearts. That is success. Yeah. That is where the success really comes from, because you can make all the money in the world and be so unhappy and miserable. And we see it all the time with people. But it really comes down to who you have at the end of the day. So that I really would feed into myself some grace. I really would. And being able to, understand that the journey doesn't end. There's no like, hey, you're going to get to this spot, because every time you get to that spot, something else happens. Right. Or something comes up and you're like, oh, now I have to fight this hurdle. I have to fight this battle. That happens, and once you become at peace with that, it comes so much more smoother. You know how to handle those things better, those challenges that come into life and those barriers. So I would tell myself that in a professionally for young, professional Miriam, or to share with other young adults is, education it's key, but there's other different avenues too. Yeah. And that's what I really, really love about the work we do at College of The Sequoias is, there's different paths. Yeah. It's not necessarily meaning like you have to go on to a 4-year. It's where are your passions? Look back and look at those breadcrumbs, like I shared earlier, that God has kind of showed you all your life what you're good at, because that's where your purpose lies. And once you can dive into that, then you know where you're going. Right. Or where you should be going. So once you can kind of look back and see, what was I really good at? What are these things kind of leading me to? It may not be the 4-year. It may be something as simple as, as I'm going to get, I'm going to do an 18-month certificate program. And that's not simple. I shouldn't say that. Yeah. But an 18-month program, that's huge. Yeah. But it may look different, and that's okay, because that still is successful, for you. Sure. So I think that's what I would tell people is it doesn't have to look like everybody else's. Mm-hmm. Society is really huge. I mean, get on social media, everybody, one trend, everybody's kind of following that trend. And that is how it looks. But, to step out of that and really follow your own journey is so important because those trends come and go. We see it all the time.
Yeah.
They don't last. It's just the culture.
Right.
So if you can kind of step out and allow yourself to be you and be your authentic self, that is huge. It is so huge to be your authentic self and in a culture that says otherwise. And I think that's something that I've learned over time, both professionally and educationally, like, in my educational journey and my career is, once you're yourself, that's where you should be. That's where your natural talents come.
Yeah.
And that's where the success comes too.
Right.
Is being able, because us being such a diverse group of people working together for, a common goal is really where the work is done. It's not when we're all like-minded.
Right.
Because if we're all like-minded, we're all doing the same thing.
Right.
And that there's room at the table for everyone.
Yes, there's room for everyone. And I want to be in tables. I want to be where people are different and they have different values and different beliefs because that helps me. That questions, that helps me question who I am and questions and kind of like, hey, where are you going? Like, it just gives me an opportunity to grow.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good. Well, this has been a great conversation. I
know.
appreciate
Thank you for having
guys
us.
Thank you for having
coming.
us.
We learned so much. Another thing too, man, there's so much opportunity here in the Valley.
Yes.
You have any questions, please come to COS and
Yes.
come see Miriam and Courtney.
Yep.
They can help you get on the right path, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have so many resources here. And
So many.
this is to bring awareness to people with all the resources. That's so we can build a better, tomorrow in our
Community, that's
community.
right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
But I really appreciate you guys coming and sharing your story.
Yes.
And
And I just want to say thank you for asking us
Yeah,
to be here
of
and
course.
just giving us an opportunity to share a little bit about ourselves.
Yeah,
and I also want to thank Miriam, of course, and my family. But I also want to thank those who have come alongside us and have really just poured into us and encouraged us. And we have, like Jonathan said, such a great community of resources.
Yeah.
There are so many resources embedded in our communities that we just don't even know about. We
Right,
don't talk
right,
about.
right.
But they're there.
Yes.
And I hope for a better day each day that we continue to highlight resources and
Yeah,
community. and
it
what
is
does that
getting
look
better.
like.
It
It
is
is,
getting better.
yeah.
We see
Yeah,
it
it
happening,
is.
and this is just part of it.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So,
yeah. And look at you. Like, I love that
know.
you've continued to expand and do your thing too. I mean,
Yes.
man, this is definitely your skill, and you are rocking it. So we
appreciate that.
appreciate
I
being in
appreciate
your
that.
your
Yes,
space too. I mean, it's amongst greatness.
Yes, I
So we appreciate you too.
that. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Alrighty, y'all. We thank
All
y'all
right.
for coming through. We signing out. Y'all have a blessed one. Peace.